Haunting in Ivan, the Rocky Mount Mystery. Rocky Mount School hunched at the edge of Ivan, south of Plain Dealing, its brick skeleton hemmed by dogwoods that whistled in the Louisiana wind. For generations, its classrooms had sat abandoned, shuttered for around 40 years. By the late 2010s, the place was a derelict beacon for urban explorers and the kids who grew up on local legend. Its days were numbered. A demo crew would soon erase Ivan's landmark, but the building drew one last group of visitors: Alex, Mariah, Devin, and Chloe. The four friends grew up tracing stories in the gravel dust and listening to older relatives describe Rocky Mount as if it were part of the land itself. Alex, home from his first year of college, carried the quiet pride of a small-town legacy. Mariah, still in high school, brought journals and old photos borrowed from her grandmother, determined to map nostalgia onto the ruins. Devin, always the instigator, thrived on dares and dreams of the unknown. Chloe, creative and sensitive, packed her camera hoping to catch a remnant of the supernatural. A humid Saturday in June found them parked near the chain-link playground fence, a fence bent and scored by storms, its posts half consumed by kudzu. Devin helped lift a section for them to crawl through, a trick learned from the older neighborhood kids. They ducked beneath faded "no trespassing" signs, stepping into the long grass that now claimed the old recess yard. The building's decay was overwhelming. Walls were caved in, plaster chipped from decades of neglect. Windows had grown mottled with grime. The gym's roof, once the pride of Rocky Mount, had collapsed altogether, leaving a yawning chasm where the bleachers slouched, and weeds reached skyward through soaked boards and glinting nails. Mariah paused, tracing her grandmother's initials in mortar. "This was her homeroom," she said softly, imagining laughter that would never echo there again. Alex led the way through the main entrance, door hanging from a single hinge, glass punched out, floor tiles buckled under fallen beams. They moved carefully, voices subdued by the sagging silence and the constant sense of distant movement. Sometimes a draft would sneak up the stairs, cold and inexplicable, making the group flinch and huddle closer. It felt as if the building held its breath, waiting. Devin, ever brave, pushed open classroom doors. The floors inside sloped and crackled, water-stained books scattered like forgotten prayers. Chloe snapped photos, one of a desk still marked with class rules, the handwriting faded but stubborn. Mariah dug through an old pile of attendance sheets, their edges curled and brown, reading down the list of names that had been written so many years ago. Alex shined his flashlight down the main hall and caught his breath. A mural painted by children, now warped and dripping from rain, small faces twisted by streaks of color and time. The friends split up for a while, each drawn by curiosity. Alex poked through the ruined library, skirting the section where ceiling tiles had collapsed and left nests of paper and mold. He found a shelf of old textbooks, science, math, English, with pages pressed together so tightly some would never open again. Devin explored the gym, gingerly tiptoeing across rotted boards. Every movement sent a cloud of dust and mold into the still air. Several times he thought he heard shuffling nearby, but convinced himself it was just birds or rodents living in the wreckage. Chloe wandered the east classroom wing, camera held at the ready. Her nerves hummed with possibility, but the lens picked up mostly shadows and the delicate patterns of decay. She tried to imagine the place filled with kids, their shoes squeaking, teachers calling from the doorways. Now, the only sound was the groan of settling timber and distant squeals of raccoons nesting beneath the floor. It was in the faculty lounge that the group finally regrouped as sunset approached. Mariah read snippets from a note she found, details of a storm the year the school closed, stories of furniture piled high against leaking windows. Devin coughed on the dust. Alex sorted through mug fragments and broken pencils, each piece a relic of a life lived here. Chloe, catching a chill, snapped a picture of the group with the remains of the school behind them, a shot she would later hold close after the unease set in. A sense of foreboding built steadily. Lights changed with every gust of wind. Shadows shifted in places where there shouldn't be movement. Alex kept glancing over his shoulder, unable to rid himself of the sensation that more than nature lingered here. Mariah commented, "It's like someone's keeping watch, like the place is waiting for us to leave." Devin laughed it off. "Maybe the ghosts don't like our shoes." But his voice wavered. Chloe nodded, hugging her camera tight. They made their way toward the collapsing gym, stepping carefully among sharp boards and rusty nails. The space was vast, open to the sky, the memories of games and gatherings swallowed in the grass growing through the floor. In one corner, a pile of abandoned uniforms glowed in the fading light. In another, a bicycle, its tires shrunken to wire. As the last light faded, the friends sensed the building urging them out. A cold breeze wound through the entrance hall, whistling through broken panes. Devin bounded ahead but paused at a sudden thud. A locker slammed closed in a part of the school they hadn't visited. Alex steadied the group, urging caution as they picked their way back toward the exit. Before stepping into the blue twilight, Chloe turned for one last photo. She raised her camera to the battered facade, focusing on a particularly grimy window beside the office door where demolition markers were stenciled. The sun hung low and blood-red behind the trees as she clicked the shutter, capturing crumbling brick, tangled wire, and the sad geometry of the school's last stand. The group left silent, adrenaline and dread mixing in their veins as they drove off. Alex dropped each friend at home, and Chloe lingered in her room, unable to settle. Sleep avoided her. Instead, she flipped through the day's pictures, skipping from the first hopeful shots to the last fragment of the building. When the final photo loaded, Chloe's breath stuck in her throat. Framed inside the window, just behind the layer of grime and shadow, a faint figure stood. He wore work overalls, his outline blurred but unmistakable, the shape of a heavy ring of keys at his belt and a mop leaning nearby. The man's face was mostly lost to the glare, but his hand, raised in the slanting dusk, was clear. A wave, fingers parted, not frantic but sorrowful, as if bidding goodbye and keeping watch over the school one last time. Chloe stared, skin prickling. No one had seen anyone there as they left. She stared longer, the sadness in the figure's posture making it feel less like a haunting and more like an old protector, wishing the living well as they moved on. Later, when she showed the photograph to friends and family, most shrugged it off, but a few grew pale and silent. Even after the demolition crews erased Rocky Mount from Ivan's woods, Chloe sometimes dreamed of the janitor in the broken window, waving, waiting. And somewhere deep inside, she wondered whether some buildings never fully die and some caretakers remain long after the last lesson is over, watching, waving, hoping for company, caught between the walls and memories. And sometimes when the wind turned just right, the stories would rise again, that Rocky Mount in its rubble still watched as the forgotten waved goodbye to the future.